All right. Hi, everyone. I am Zac Farrell, co-founder of Hotdata. And today I want to talk a little bit about our experience bringing DuckLake to DataFusion. And I see some familiar faces that saw a version of this talk earlier this week. Thanks for the encore. And anyone that hasn't should talk to Dory from Recce and make it to the next data debug event where we give this talk. It's a great event. Definitely recommend it. So we obviously just got a great overview of DuckLake, and so I won't go through that again. But just to call out a couple things, DuckLake is just a spec. It is not dependent on DuckDB. DuckDB is very good at what it does, and if you're using DuckDB, you should continue using DuckDB. But there's also other cases where you might not be using DuckDB, particularly if you're using DataFusion. You already have a query engine. Why bring another engine in to access DuckLake? So a little bit about us. My co-founders and I previously worked at a company called Mode Analytics, and there we operated the data platform, basically ingesting data for customers, bringing it in from their data warehouses, and then running analytical queries on those. We used DuckDB to process this and basically stored the data in a custom table format in S3, which worked pretty well. But anytime we wanted to add new access to this data, it was a custom implementation and extra work. And then over time, as these lakehouse features became more prominent and customers started asking for them, it was a lot of work to try to bring those retrofit our format to support that. We seriously considered at one point switching over to Iceberg, but after investigating it just was too complex to migrate, and the performance considerations that Beth mentioned became a serious blocker for us to switch. So when we started Hotdata, our first initial prototypes started with something familiar to us, which was building around DuckDB. And we had been following the DuckLake project from afar and knew that we wanted to this was the right time to bring it in. Although we had a point where we needed something more than DuckDB for what we were building, and that's where we found and kind of fell in love with DataFusion and have been using it ever since. But we were still really interested in DuckLake and wanted to figure out how to add native support, and so that's what we did. Trying to integrate with a new table format that's rapidly evolving is kind of a challenge. As great as the DuckDB folks are, there's lots of great documentation and stuff. It's still just a hard thing being one of the first to integrate with it and trying to understand what it is to be compliant with the spec. Part of this was just like how we prioritize the project and figuring out what are the features and even more important, what are the features beneath the features that aren't necessarily called out that you have to understand and support to be able to support it. Ultimately, the path we chose was to start with read support, and even from there, a subset of that was applicable to our use cases. And knowing that we'd eventually get, or at least try to get to full feature parity with the DuckDB implementation. And so over the last couple months, that's what we've built. We have a lot of the read support, support all of the metadata backends, most of the things you'd expect, a lot of the DuckLake specific functions, and we are approaching adding more and more of the write support and administrative functions like compaction and whatnot. So one lesson we learned being new to DataFusion was when we first implemented this, we kind of struggled expecting to be able to cache table providers and reuse those across queries. But the problem was that DuckLake expects you to use a consistent snapshot. So as I was saying, every commit creates a new snapshot. And so it's really important that a query referencing two different tables uses a consistent snapshot. Otherwise, you could be looking at data that's not in an actual state. It can be across different snapshots. We expected to be able to pass some sort of query context, for lack of a better term, between the table providers. and ultimately realized like that just isn't how it works in DataFusion, and so we changed to using a fresh session context per query. So that said, if you know of a better way to approach this, definitely talk to me after this. I would love to be corrected and learn a better way, but that's just one thing we found. And then, yeah, as of a couple weeks ago, as I was saying, we have write support now, started with inserts, and look to quickly follow with updates and deletes, as well as inlining. Yeah, ultimately, we plan to be fully compliant with the spec and have full feature parity. This will be kind of as our needs evolve, but definitely would be accelerated by the community and anyone asking for certain features. We'd love to hear from y'all if there's something that would be useful to you. And then just kind of in reflection of this process, we've had the pleasure of meeting with Pedro and Guillermo from DuckDB Labs, who are doing a lot of the work for DuckLake, and they've been great collaborators and receptive to this feedback, and how like we can grow DuckLake to support many implementations. And so they're already working and thinking about this, and we've suggested some things. So just to call it a couple of those things that we think are like low hanging fruit to improve this. Better way to define the spec and test against the spec without every implementer having to reinvent this process. Likely this could look like some sort of like SQL logic test or something where we have queries and expected output. And then as you're building that, you would have some well-known spec to build against. Similarly, just to a guarantee correctness. And then kind of a stretch would be like over time as DuckLake folks, as Mother Duck, or any of us really start to learn what the community values out of the features. As I was sharing earlier, it was a bit of a struggle to figure out like, well, which of these features do people care about if anyone's going to use this? And so adding some sort of weight to like how valuable different things are, just like, oh, typically the community likes these features, maybe of some value. And then finally, like, just want to say, like, we are big believers at Hotdata in giving back to the community, being part of the community, and ultimately, yeah, we could have just imported DuckDB and used their phenomenal extension, but we want to enhance and build this community, and we think like together we can do something better. Yeah, so with that, I'd encourage you to try it out. Play around with it. Let us know what we got right. Let us know what we got wrong. If you want to star the repo, we'd love that. If you want to file a PR, anything like that, we would definitely take that. So thanks so much.